Caitlin, hit the music. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and whenever you're listening to us, we hope it is good. Welcome to a very special edition of the Geeks Who Like Sports Leaderboard Interviews. As always, I am Ray Carcello in beautiful Los Angeles, California. Joined by my best friend in the entire world here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Lee Elias. And our special guest today is the one and only. He is a co-host of the Who Would Win podcast. Their episode, Dr. Robotnik versus Captain America, just dropped. So go check that out. He is also a co-host of the Knowing is Half the podcast about G.I. Joe. He has worked on games like Call of Duty, League of Legends, Apex Legends. You might have heard of those little things.
A lot of B titles there. Yeah,
nothing major. Ray Stakenas. Ray, how's it going today?
I am having a blast. Thank you so much for having me on the show. You know, when y'all reached out and said, we're looking for people who like video games and sports, I think I know a guy.
Yeah. It's in the title. I will say this, Ray. You were jamming to our music there. I was watching you.
I loved it. I love this music. Yeah. I would be honest, if that was just playing in the background during the entire episode, I'd be okay with that. Honestly, maybe not the best choice. I'd be too distracted. I'd be dancing the entire time.
Yeah. So we got to fade it out so we can focus on the questions here. We got a lot to talk about with you.
Yeah, and Ray, I will not confirm or deny if I do that in my car sometimes. That nobody needs to know, but it's out there now that I may or may not do that in my car to the Geeks Who Like Sports and Video Games theme.
I get it. Trust me, you don't got to explain nothing to this guy.
There you go.
Producer Caitlin saying, letting us know that she
Bring
could
it in.
do
There
that,
it is.
No need, Producer Caitlin. It's okay.
All right, we're just gonna sit here. Now, we should just stop talking and let people jam out.
Man,
anyway, listen.
I'm back at Bar Sinister again on a Saturday night in Los Angeles. It's wonderful.
There you go.
Well, again, Ray, we want to thank you, of course, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And yeah, man, like you are the perfect guest for this show. You are one of us. You are a geek who likes sports. You are a Detroit sports fan, to my knowledge. You Tigers,
right.
Lions, Pistons, Red Wings. So let's start there. Your Red Wings last night had themselves a pretty rough loss to the Washington Capitals.
Well, they had a rough loss, Ray. The Red Wings had a rough loss last night, huh?
I mean, I will say this, Ray, you might not know. Me, I actually predicted that Lee's Flyers would make the playoffs. They then proceeded to lose 9-3 to Montreal, pretty much ending their playoff.
They got the touchdown, PAT, and the field goal in that game.
Yeah, they got a lot there. But Ray, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? First off, as a Detroit sports fan, you feel like you're on the resurgence. I feel like. How do you feel before we start diving deep into each specific team? How do you feel as a Detroit sports fan?
No, I feel great as a Detroit sports fan. It's been pretty lean the last, say, 10, 15 years. You know, the 90s were pretty darn good, to be honest with you. I remember them pretty well. The aughts, you know, had their hits and then they had their misses. The Tigers are good. The Lions are losing every game under the sun. What are you going to do? Well, we had a Pistons championship mixed in with there and some good Red Wings teams. So we've had some good times, not so much lately. The current resurgence is the most life we've seen out of our Detroit sports teams in a long time.
Yeah, you've got three teams right now. The Tigers it's very early in the baseball season, but they look competitive, especially in a weak AL Central. The Lions, of course, went to their first NFC championship in 30 years. I was rooting for them hard because nobody likes the 49ers. And yeah, your Red Wings are on the cusp of the playoffs here. They're fighting back and forth. A lot of teams flip-flopping. Pittsburgh, Detroit, Washington, they're all in on it. How do you feel, though, as right now, we'll start with hockey, about your Red Wings, how they've rebuilt, the pieces they've picked up, the moves they've made? How are you feeling for this year and going forward if you should not make the playoffs?
No, I feel good about this team. Like, this has been a team that we've been talking internally for about the last 2 to 3 years. It's like, you know, they're making little moves here. And, you know, what, Patrick Kane coming to town got some people real excited. Me as an old, I got very excited about that move because I hated him. So if you ever in hockey, my thing is if you can bring in somebody that you absolutely hate, you're going to love them when they play for you. Is just generally how I feel about it. Like when we got back in the day, we got Dominik Hasek, the famed goalie, took the Czech Republic real far in the what was that? Was it the Olympics? Might have been the Olympics. It was awesome.
They won the Olympics with him. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, he was just dominant.
Yeah.
Came to us, won a cup like almost immediately. It was good times to be had by all. The Red Wings, we just kept waiting for something good to happen. You know, unlike all the other Detroit sports teams, where generally we're like, okay, we're just waiting for something bad to happen. With the Red Wings, they have a pedigree at this point where even though they've been down for like a decade straight, it's like, yeah, but we all think they're going to be good again. It's just a matter of time. And they may finally have put the pieces together. You know, They may or may not make the playoffs this year. They're going to need to really put it together at the end to make a run to get there. But at that point, we're all expecting them to be on the up and up next year.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that's a great, I think, spot on analysis. I think you got a lot of good young players too, like Lucas Raymond and whatnot. I think you might, but kind of like when you mentioned you got Dominic Hasek, you might be a goalie away from really being a true contender again.
Right, exactly. You know, the days of the Chris Osgoods of the world are long behind us.
Yes, for sure. Speaking of winter sports, your Pistons unfortunately are not doing too hot. They seem to always be at the bottom of the NBA. It's been a while since that I think 04 championship. So
great year.
Yeah. So it been a rough year for you guys. What do you think the Pistons have to do to kind of become competitive again in the NBA?
Much like the family Madrigal from the movie Encanto, we don't talk about Pistons. For the last 5 years, and this has been killer to me because I would say I watch the Pistons. You know, I'll be honest, I watch the Pistons when they're good. And when they're not, I don't really waste my time with such an inferior, lackluster product. Usually it's like once every 15 years, they go on like a 2-year run where they're crazy dominant. And then they just disappear again. And then, so it's sort of like the eclipse, I'll know it when it's in the sky and I'll come outside and check it out. But for Pistons fans in the zeitgeist, for the last 5 years, every year we just hear, okay, yeah, they're the worst team in the NBA this year. But the draft picks, they just drafted the best they've ever done. And then they got Cade Cunningham, and then they got a couple other guys. And then, okay, but next year they're really going to like show something. And then next year happens like, okay, I know they're the worst team in the NBA this year, but these draft picks they got and the young talent, next year. And that was like 3 years ago. And every year it's the same thing. Well, guys, with this much talent, obviously, and then they have the worst record in the NBA, like 4 out of the last 5 years or something silly like that. And I just go, guys, call me when they're there. Stop telling me they're on the way. Tell me when they're at my door, and I will be happy to open it. I've made that mistake too many years to even be bothered with it. And because on paper, this team should be very, very good. And they're terrible. And I don't know what to make of it. And I don't like thinking about it when I have a lot of versions in front of me.
We don't talk about Pistons. We should make a whole song.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we could do a whole song about that. I'll spare you both, though.
I kind of feel your pain though, because I'm a Knicks fan, and like I feel like for many years it was a similar situation where it was we're going to be good, we're going to be good, we're going to be all right,
Ray,
we're going to be competitive.
I'm cutting you off. You don't.
In the last couple of years though, the Knicks have been good.
Don't
the Knicks
ever
good
get to complain
Finally.
as a New York sports fan ever.
I can.
When is the New York team going to win anything? For gosh sakes. It's
been
terrible
15
for New York
years.
fans.
Oh my God! It's been 15 years.
Wow, what a pain you must be feeling inside of you.
Oh my God! To
be fair, the Knicks have never won in my lifetime, though. To be fair, we're talking about basketball.
We'll never win in your lifetime. That's okay.
You're probably still right, but I think this year Eastern Conference Final is our peak. We'll lose the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Final, but. We'll see what happens.
I'm just going to reiterate. You had a youth with your sports teams. My youth with my sports teams was Eric Lindros getting knocked out by Scott Stevens. That ended my youth. And also the Detroit Red Wings played heavily into that in 1997.
We did.
Thank you, sir.
I was going to say, you bring up the Flyers. All I think about is that one season.
It was brutal.
Feel good about it. Not going to lie.
Oh, you should feel good. Yeah. It was a clean sweep of at the time the most dominant team in the NHL.
They were scary. That's the thing. Yeah. People don't even remember that how good Philly was that year.
They were almost unstoppable that year. And they swept the floor almost with the Rangers that year, who had won the year before, a couple of years before. I'm not making fun of the Rangers. They were just a very dominant team, the Flyers. But that Detroit Red Wings team had felt a lot of pain, and that's what surged them through. They had lost in the final the year before. It was just an amazing run. 2 years prior. I apologize. It was an amazing run. You lost to 95 and you came back 1-2 in a row. 2 sweeps too. You swept Washington the next year as well.
Well, they got pissed at a certain point and just decided to just put it away,
Yeah, that and Steve Yzerman played two-way hockey and became the best two-way player in history. And then, having 10 or 12 Hall of Fame goaltenders in a row, apparently that's a key to success.
Who knew stopping goals could win you hockey games? Crazy.
Yeah, don't bring logic to this. No, exactly, right? It's an amazing time. But no, I tease with Ray all the time. I will say it has been a drought for New York. And Ray, I'm sorry that you have one team, just the one, that has never won for you.
Yeah, no, this is the one team. Yeah, because I got before, and obviously the Giants, a lot of success in my lifetime, and obviously the Yankees, it goes without saying. Speaking of Yankees and speaking of baseball, some interesting starts for our teams. The Phillies are playing like garbage, but the Tigers are playing very well.
We're not playing like garbage. You're
not playing great, and my Yankees are playing great.
You better be careful, young man who just turned 1 year younger than me.
I mean, hey, look, it fits with your City Connects, right? Your new City Connect uniforms are awful.
Ray, what's happening is I made fun of New York, and now he's trying to come after Philly. But I say this on the show all the time, Ray. Nobody hates Philly sports more than us.
Yeah, you can't make a Philly sports fans miserable. They do that themselves.
We do it ourselves. Fine. Yeah. I mean, look, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson called us trailer trash, and we gave him a standing ovation for it. We know what we're doing.
Look, we all know the Bill Burr rant. We don't need to get into it here.
That's fair. No, I wouldn't. Look, Ray and I talk about this all the time too. It's way too early in the season to be making any crazy predictions.
Absolutely.
But if you're 500 this time of year, I think that's comfortable for a lot of teams.
Yeah, the only teams that are probably already worried are probably the 1-12 Marlins.
They aren't worried because they never had expectations.
Yeah, they don't care.
That's fair. Yeah, that's true. Their ownership group doesn't care. But Ray, you got to be feeling good though, as a Tigers fan, to see at least so far. Again, it's early, but you're looking competitive, and you're in a soft division. 88 wins could win you like the AL Central, and people have been saying it's been the Tigers' time to start to resurge here for the last couple of years. Not quite unlike your Pistons, but obviously the Tigers, I actually think, have a chance of doing that. What are your thoughts on the Tigers?
I absolutely agree. The thing is, we got off to a great start. I think 7-4 at a certain point. The last time I checked the standings, and the problem with it is we play nothing but soft teams every single one of those series. When you're playing only the White Sox and the A's, how can you really judge? And now the Pirates, how good can you really tell how your team is if you're not playing the best teams in the league? I was floored when the Yankees swept the Astros to start the season. That one really caught my attention as something I did not see coming even a little bit, especially given that what was going on last year. But yeah, I'm really excited for the Tigers. A lot of good young players coming in there with the Spencer Torkelson. I'm a huge fan of Colt Keith coming up this year for his kind of rookie season, basically. And then, the outfield Meadows and Riley Green and that crowd. It's a very exciting team with very young talent all across the board. A really exciting pitching staff with Tarek up in there. Yeah, I'm excited for where we're going. I had expectations, not necessarily win the division per se, but be competitive for the division and make the playoffs. I definitely think, in that neighborhood is where we should be this year. So to see that paying off at least early, we'll see when they start playing the tougher competition, but at least for right now, hey, it's an exciting time. I've watched more Tigers games this year than probably the last 10 years combined already. Wow. I'm actively seeking out the team this year because they're young and exciting and fun to watch.
I think that's a great point. I mean, I think Tarek Skubal, has the makings. As long as he stays healthy, he's a legit ace. He's been pitching great, been pitching great early on. But you mentioned Riley Green. I gotta just quickly mention this. We like to rag on the new uniforms here on the show. And Riley, I think it was Riley Green who slid into home plate and his entire pants ripped in yesterday's game because of how cheap the new uniforms are. You have any thoughts on the new baseball uniforms and the new fabric and just that fiasco?
I mean, look, I'm no Dolce & Gabbana, Coco Chanel out here. I am not here to talk about uniforms, costumes, hats. As long as it has the Old English D on it, I do not care. You could play in shorts like that one White Sox team did back in the 1970s.
Actually, I'd love to see that. Might be a little tough when sliding. Everybody have to slide face first, hands first.
Well, it was extra tough because back then the guys wore short shorts, so it was real revealing.
The sand, it just gets everywhere.
You wouldn't want.
I hate sand.
You wouldn't wish that. It lasted one season and then they stopped doing it. That'll tell you how successful it was.
Yeah, there you go. So. And then finally, your Lions, NFC. Made it to the
Let's
NFC
talk
Championship
about
game.
that.
Yes.
There you go.
The Detroit Lions on the upswing. So, I mean, there's obviously a lot to feel good about. You guys have a great young core there led by, and then you got Jared Goff, who's in the surprisingly steady hand under center. How do you feel about Goff? Let me get your thoughts first on the Stafford trade that brought Goff to use. When that happened, how did you feel? Obviously, Stafford was, the Lions guy. He led you to the playoffs a couple times. You didn't go anywhere. Obviously, tremendous talent. How did you feel about Goff coming over to Detroit, and then how he has now embraced the city, embraced his team, and led them to new heights?
Matthew Stafford, in my opinion, is one of the greatest human beings to have ever walked God's green earth. When he got traded away, I was unbelievably devastated. I don't want to say tears were shed, but I will say it was raining inside my bathroom that day. What I'm trying to tell you is that that one hurts. And then watching him win a Super Bowl, one of the happiest days of my life. I could not wish more for a better person. We just couldn't put together the team around him. It was never his fault. And he took all the blame from Detroit fans wildly unfairly when they never gave him a running game. Only 1 year did they give him a defense, and then even then the refs had to steal the game in Dallas in the playoffs by calling an obvious DPI that would have ended the game effectively, and then just decided, no, we don't want to do that anymore. And then watch Jerry Jones party on, or the head of referees party on Jerry Jones's party bus later that day. Look it up. Could not be more frustrated. I respected Jared Goff. I saw, as an LA person, I watched Jared Goff go from being, why did we draft this guy 1 overall? He can't play football, to taking him to the Super Bowl and everybody being like, this guy can go. This guy's a real baller. Then all of a sudden in his last year here for the Rams, everybody was like, oh, he can't play again. I'm like, that's not how quarterback. Look at Phillip Rivers all those years. People will be like, oh, Phillip Rivers can play again. Or you put a team around him. Like sometimes, guys will rise to the level of the team you put around him. And Jared Goff is one of those Phillip Rivers types, in my opinion. So they put this unbelievable team around him with so much talent. Let Jared Goff work with Ben Johnson, the greatest offensive mind in the league right now, as far as I'm concerned. And they let the two of them cook and let Jared Goff help design the offense. As long as he stays upright, like he knows where the ball's going to go because he helped plan it. It's outstanding. I love Jared Goff. He's another great human being, quite honestly, who dealt with a lot of crap even when he came to Detroit. Because I'll tell you right now, the fans overall, I said give him a shot. He looks good. He looks like he can play if we put a team around him. A lot of people were ready to ship him out of town in season number 1. And now they're chanting his name at Red Wings games. That's all you need to know about that. The excitement couldn't be more palpable for we Lions fans. We've been waiting literally 30 years. Most of my adult life has been spent waiting for this moment. The skies are bright right now for Lions fans, and it's great to see.
Let me ask this, buddy. I imagine, and I'm not trying to be funny here. We all know I get sarcastic on the show sometimes, but I imagine Detroit, where I've been a few times, is a lot like Philadelphia in terms of its sports fans, where I would say in recent years, Detroit's been a little more tortured than Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia has the title maybe more all time, but I've always imagined Detroit fans as very knowledgeable about their sport, very passionate about their teams, and they want to win. A lot of people, that's every city. It's not every city. I've been to a lot of sports cities, and I know that there's a lot of pro cities, especially that are very nonchalant about their pro teams of, oh yeah, if they're winning, it's great. Ray, I think you'd admit most Dodger fans are like that, right? Dodgers are a historic franchise, but I know people that love them, but when they're losing, they're just like, oh, all right.
I think outside of the Lakers, I think a lot of folks in LA are very nonchalant.
Yeah, and the Lakers have the history to back up that kind of diehard following. But other Ray, I'm just saying, like I imagine Detroit fans are a pretty diehard bunch that really love their team. And again, gritty in the sense of the way we view Philadelphia sports.
100%. Look, Michigan fans in general, Detroit fans in particular, it's a football first city. And a lot of people don't know that because the Lions have been down for so long. People think that we're like hockey town or, it's a big baseball. And we love all of the above. We love all of our teams. We will be there for all of our teams. But you got to give us a reason to show up, right?
For sure.
At least when the Pistons traded for Blake Griffin, there was a little bit of excitement around the team, and then the fans showed up for it, even though they weren't going anywhere. At least you showed us that you care. And if you can't show us you care, why should we care?
Yeah, that's exactly like it is here. You know, it's funny when I look at the two cities, like the Detroit Pistons of the 70s and 80s kind of resemble the Broad Street Bullies a little bit in terms of toughness. The reason why people think Detroit is only hockey town, aside from the obvious, with that being the name, is because hockey's not popular in other areas, but hockey in the Northern Corridor is extremely popular. So it looks to a non or normal hockey fan like, wow, they really love it up there. Like, no, man, they just love hockey up north. Like, you don't understand. Like, not to mention the collegiate side of things up there. But yeah, thanks for confirming that, man. Because I always had kind of Detroit to me was always like, I kind of get it. I always say down here, New York, Philadelphia, New Jersey, and Boston, we're all the same a-hole, just kind of pointing at each other, not realizing that we're the same a-hole. Right? Like, no, we're the better a-hole.
It's the Spider-Man meme.
It's totally that, But
it's 100% true.
You can be a-holes with us, Ray. That's what I'm trying to say.
You left one thing out. It's that, you do have those 4 sports fans. But the thing is, Boston, New York, and New Jersey sports fans will all agree Philadelphia is the worst a-holes. See, that's the thing.
Yeah, no.
All 3 of them are pointing at each other like Spider-Man, but you're in the middle.
Yeah, but we agree. And we wear that like a badge of pride. You have to know that.
It's true. No, and I will say Detroit sports fans, I would say we're different. We're different than the angry East Coast people. We're more just like tough it out Northerners than we are, because we're not relevant. Philadelphia is about as far west as you can go and still be somewhat relevant, although not as much as the other places you mentioned. Let's be real. And Detroit, we know that we're not being considered. And so we show up, we get loud, we have a good time. I think that generally speaking, as far as fandoms go, Detroit fans are a lot kinder to outsiders and allowing of that. I remember this because I used to be a Lions season ticket holder when I lived in Detroit, in that area. And I would say Philadelphia New York fans, when they came to town, we were not happy. They were loud, arrogant. They often won, beat us, in Detroit. It was never fun. But Philadelphia fans did just take it to a whole other level. I was at a Lions-Eagles game back in the early aughts, and both teams were fairly competitive a little bit at that time. And you guys beat us something like 42-6 at Ford Field. And I've never been more angry and upset and ready to throw down against an entire city than when Terrell Owens caught a touchdown in the end zone. Obviously, that's where you catch touchdowns. He looks up into the crowd. I swear to God, I had end zone season tickets. He looks at me specifically directly in the eye, puts the ball down, puts one foot on the ball, and does the slowest salute you could ever see directly at me. And I was ready to go onto the field and take him on right there. Now, I wouldn't have won that confrontation, but that's the level of rage that Philadelphia fans, by their nature, bring up in opposing fans.
And Ray, I'll tell you that I really appreciate you bringing up your admiration for us. This is how Philadelphia fans will interpret what you're saying, of that graded admiration of hatred for us. No, look, I'll tell you this, joking aside, buddy, and Ray knows this about me. Look, I'm a sports fan, sports coach, sports guy. So I have a lot of respect for most fan bases. Philadelphia fans absolutely take it too far most of the time. But it's part of the identity of that city, that sports fan base, and they've embraced it wholly. And you gotta respect the embracement of an identity. I'm not going to say that it's a great identity overall, because I do think it gets us in trouble more than often than not. But look, I've been to games at Little Caesars, and I've obviously been by Ford Field and baseball field. I went to a Detroit Red Wings game a couple of years ago. They got completely demolished. The fans were the nicest people in the world. So it's almost weird. They're like, well, that sucked. Let's go get some pizza. And I was like, oh, okay, wow. That's not what happens in Philadelphia when our teams lose. It's the season's over. Throw in the towel. This team sucks.
That's it.
Anyway, we can get off
Detroit
the topic.
are generally more contented in life than people in Philadelphia. And I don't know exactly why that is, but even though we don't have anything more, we feel like we do. And I think that's just it. With Philadelphia, they don't feel like they have anything else off the field. Which is again why LA fans are the way they are too. Because at the end of the day, we still get to live in Los Angeles, the greatest city in the world.
We have cheesesteaks and fictional boxers.
No, man, that's and in Detroit, we're building a statue of RoboCop. You know, I help contribute to that. Why wouldn't I?
Well, I mean, I think it's a big thing nowadays, right? We got the Batman statue in Burbank. You know, you get RoboCop now in Detroit. You're gonna start seeing. We want superhero statues everywhere. So, right, pop culture.
The Batman statue is the wildest one because, like, the Rocky statue, I absolutely get. Like, Rocky to Philadelphia, of course. And where they put it, like, yeah, of course. And then the RoboCop, I don't even know where the RoboCop statue ended up. I funded it like 15 years ago. My understanding is it exists somewhere in like a building or something, but that's fine. It's RoboCop. Why is there a Batman statue outside the Buffalo Wild Wings in Burbank? Next to the Johnny Rockets hamburgers?
Yeah,
like,
right,
I don't like.
right.
I've been to it. I love it.
Yeah.
Right. He's whatever Gotham needs him to be.
But we're not even Gotham City. We're Los
Yeah,
Angeles. I could see putting it in
He's whatever
New York.
Gotham needs him to be. You don't know
what
why.
It was Warner Brothers was like, we're going to commission a statue. We're going to put it on the East Coast. Then, you know what? We were like, you know what? We're going to just stop it at Burbank, the truck at Burbank, and it's going to be a tax write-off. And we'll just leave it there. And that's going to be it.
Yeah, it's going to be right next to that Acme movie that they canceled. It's fine. It's fine.
Exactly. And underneath the Batman statue is actually the final cut of the Batgirl film, actually. So that's under there as well. So there you go.
Oh, there we go. RoboCop is going to be in the Eastern Market in Detroit. Thank you, Caitlin.
Producer
for the update.
Caitlin with the clutch info
She's
here.
the best. Right.
Yes.
Eastern Market's where you tailgate for Lions games. So that's fantastic. That is where he deserves to be. That's where he can do the most good.
There you go. Oh man. So you mentioned pizza. I got to really quickly know: are you a Detroit style pizza guy? Are you Chicago? Or are you New York?
There's another style of pizza other than Detroit style pizza. I'm confused.
Pizza.
Because in my world, there is only Detroit pizza, and then there's all the other slop that exists.
Oh, dude, no. I am sorry, my friend. Like you guys, I didn't even realize Detroit had its own pizza, and we
don't want you to know about it.
Chicago, it's just crusty Chicago pizza.
Are you sure you're not as Philadelphia as you think? You don't want to share your pizza and you're ripping me? Come on, buddy.
No, that's fair. You guys share your cheese. No, if you want to go get Detroit pizza, you got to go get the authentic one. By that, of course, I mean Little Caesars, Pan, the cheapest version of official Detroit pizza you can get. Not the worst thing in the world. But no, I'm not a fan of New York pizza. It's far too oily and greasy. It's and you got to fold it in order to eat it. What are we talking about? Make pizza that can be eaten easily. New York, you're on notice.
Folding it is easy.
Why should I have to do extra work to eat something? What are you going to do?
Heavyweight matchup between Ray and
this.
Ray. Pizza. Should it be folded or not? Find out tonight.
Look, I want my pizza made in automotive pans. I want the bread to everything ratio to be completely out of whack. I want you to burn the cheese in the corners. That's real pizza to me.
No, the fact that you burn the pizza at all doesn't make it pizza.
He just goes, no.
Much like when you have to cook an onion for it to be delicious, you have to burn cheese to make it really great.
I believe the immortal Jon Stewart was correct in the fact that they call it Detroit pizza, Chicago pizza. But in New York, they just call it pizza.
Yeah, there you go.
That's because that's all they know. New Yorkers are myopic. I don't know if you knew this.
Buddy, they're the center of the universe. I'm not even from New York, and I know that.
Yes, that's right. Everything revolves around New York.
It's tough because I have to grab onto the side of my house because we're rotating around New York at such a degree that I'm going to fly off the earth if I don't grab something when I go outdoors. It's outrageous.
Ray, he's whatever Gotham needs him to be. But does that not fit here?
In Burbank.
In Burbank.
For real, though, if you get a chance to and you're in LA, go to the AMC Theater / Buffalo Wild Wings / Fuddruckers. If it's still there, with a Batman statue. It's that was already one of my favorite places in Burbank to be because I'm absolute trash. But to put a Batman statue there made me feel complete.
There you go.
All right, back on topic. You mentioned Ben Johnson earlier. I want to talk a little bit more about the Lions before we move on.
I will talk about the Lions for the next 8 hours if you let me.
Well, guys, it was great. I gotta go. I'll see you.
Not 8 hours. I do want to know. You mentioned Ben Johnson. Were you surprised that he stuck around? Because he was at the top of a lot of people's lists.
I was overjoyed.
Yeah, but he was at the top of a lot of people's lists to go elsewhere for a head coaching position.
Correct. And 2 years ago, he was offered the Carolina Panthers job, which you want to talk about dodging a missile. Holy crap.
Cow.
They flat out said, we want to have you. And he looked at the situation, looked at that garbage owner, Tepper. What a piece of absolute trash. Look, Tepper, I don't like this man. And then the more I learned about him, the less I liked about him. The fact that he intentionally says his employees' names incorrectly to show that he's better than them. What absolute human garbage. You can take me to court over it, Tepper. You're trash. And I hope someone throws mustard at you at your next game. So anyway, he dodged that bullet. We all thought there was a very real chance, but as coaches were getting hired and the vacancies got lower and lower, the deeper we went into the playoffs, it started looking like it might be okay. Because you looked at the two jobs that were left, and it was like the Washington Commanders job and then one other Garbo job. And we're like, he's not going to go to either of these teams. He's not desperate. Oh, the other one was the Chargers, I think, right? And the thing was, I hated losing Harbaugh. But if you're going to lose because he just won a national championship and he's proven what he needs to prove, you can go happy. I'm not mad about that. I honestly thought Ben Johnson would go to the Chargers. So it's like, I got to lose Harbaugh for it. Okay. He won. That's fine. That's fine. And when we win the Super Bowl next year, Ben Johnson can go off into the sunset a champion, and I'm going to be excited about that too.
I don't know about you winning the Super Bowl, but you are near the top of the list in the NFC. For sure. I think Tepper. Yeah, I think Tepper, I mean, he's probably right now the Mount Rushmore of worst owners in sports. You got Fisher with the Oakland Athletics. You've got James Dolan with the Rangers and Knicks because he's always near the top there. Awful. And then you've got Tepper down there in Carolina, some of the worst owners in sports. And let's throw the Houston Astros owner in there just because. Oh, that's right, because he said the Ohtani scandal was the worst scandal in baseball. I don't know if you heard about that, Ray. The Houston Astros owner is calling the Ohtani situation the worst scandal in baseball.
That's outrageous. I did not hear that. That's wonderful.
That's a guy who lives in the present moment.
Yeah.
That is Jeffrey Dahmer offering food critiques. That's fantastic.
Give it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, so that's so there we go. The worst owners in sports, or as we like to say here, folks who are going to step in front of the bus.
It's crazy that the Panthers had, what was his name, Jerry Richardson, and he was so bad they had to get rid of him, and they somehow found someone worse. That's outstanding. Stay irrelevant, Carolina.
Yeah. So that does it for the sports
Lions
section.
are winning the Super Bowl next year, and that's all you need to know about that. Thank you.
There you go. So already calling it right here. Ray says the Lions will be your Super Bowl champions next year.
Get your betting slips in now.
Who they beat?
I honestly think they're going to beat. Who cares? The AFC is trash. Kansas City's on the come down. I don't care about the AFC. It could be the Ravens. They look really good. I don't know what the Buffalo Bills are doing. My 6-year-old, she decided she's a Dolphins fan. So I'm going to say the Miami Dolphins get that 1 or 2 seed that they need, because if they have to go on the road, they cannot win a playoff game. Yes. I believe they've proven that, especially if they have to go anywhere where it's below, let me check, 85 degrees. They're not going to win. I'm going to say, though, the Miami Dolphins, just as a shout out to my 6-year-old.
Fair enough. I like that. That's not a bad pick, actually, because the Bills are going to fall off, and
terrible.
I think watch out for the Houston Texans. CJ Stroud, if he avoids that sophomore slump.
I don't trust any Ohio State quarterback for personal reasons, but also, why should anyone think an Ohio State quarterback is going anywhere?
Ray, question for you: would you trust quarterbacks out of Duke?
Quarterbacks out of Duke?
I
would trust them more than I would trust quarterbacks out of Ohio State. Ohio State quarterbacks make great wide receivers.
Ray Carcillo, your thoughts?
No, you never draft a quarterback out of Duke. Never. Okay. The only quarterbacks, that's Dave Brown from the 1995 Giants and Daniel Dumpster Fire Jones. You never draft a quarterback out of Duke.
No, okay, I'm gonna actually hold on. I'm gonna disagree with you there, Ray. You can absolutely draft a quarterback out of Duke. You don't sign them to $45 million a year contracts.
Well, that's the other thing. Oh, Ray, don't get me started on what the Giants did giving Daniel Jones all that freaking money. If you were going to give him a long contract, it should have been not that much money. If you're going to give him a lot of money, it should have been 2 years. That's it.
I got to chime in here real quick, guys. I got to for the.
This is
the
your
audience,
fault, Lee. You started this. You pulled the pin on that grenade and you rolled it into the podcast.
No. What I've just done, Ray, was a social test. All right, and I got to let the audience that's listening know this. If you're not watching this episode, you might want to come on YouTube because not only are they both named Ray, they are both wearing the same glasses, the same freaking T-shirt, and looks like they live in the same apartment because I've been to Ray Carcillo's apartment, and you sound the same. And I'm not going to lie to you guys. It's freaking me out a little bit. All right. It's like I'm talking to the same person. There's a Detroit Ray and there's a New York Ray that's in Los Angeles. So you got both of those covered.
I get it. I'll do the show. I'll do the rest of the show topless if it'll help you.
How much money is that going to? No, buddy. This show is rated PG.
I got a Venmo. Just send it over.
Venmo.
I take tips.
I got a cup of coffee. You guys are very similar. I mean, it's freaking me out. I'm feeling outnumbered, and this isn't like a triple threat match.
Yeah, it's a handicap match. It's the two Rays versus one Lee.
Yeah, it's just like geeks who like sports and geeks.
Yeah,
Ray, you can continue the show. I'm just making a social observation.
Yeah. So. Moving to the geek section. Speaking of geeks, I have to mention, Ray. Something else that me and Ray have in common is that we're both huge G.I. Joe fans, and he has a podcast called "Knowing Is Half the Podcast." So Ray, first of all, I gotta know what was the impetus? What was the look at that Cobra Commander? That's phenomenal. If you guys are not watching the video, go watch the video on YouTube. He's got a Funko Pop Cobra Commander that looks amazing. What was the impetus for starting your G.I. Joe podcast?
I've been a huge G.I. Joe fan. Like that's a lot of people, those of us who were kids in the 80s, we had that one thing that was our thing. For a lot of kids, it was Transformers. Kids, some kids were really into He-Man or Thundercats. For me, it was always G.I. Joe number 1, 2, and 3. Huge fan, had a ton of the toys, vehicles, action sets. Like just G.I. Joe was absolutely my life when I was a kid. And then it never really left me. I still really enjoyed it. Started reading some of the comic books from IDW when they came out in the early aughts, and I thought they did a phenomenal job with the storytelling. The live action movies, I wouldn't say those kept me on board very much. But we've been doing the G.I. Joe Knowing Is Half the Podcast show since 2015. We started the show on July 4th because it made the most sense to be the most memorable day to start the G.I. Joe show. And it's myself, I'm a massive fan. I love the property. I wanted an excuse to go back and rewatch all of the original series again. I was talking with my podcast friend and partner, Robert Clark Chan. We talked about doing a show together. And he'd been doing a series of podcasts. I've been doing a series of other podcasts, sports podcasts and whatnot. And we're just like, we got to get the hook together. We got to figure out what we want to do. So I said, I got an idea. I don't know if it's going to work. I brought over a random DVD. I just pulled it out of this pile of DVDs of G.I. Joe cartoons. I said, let's watch a random episode of this. You tell me if there's enough here that we could do a funny show. And it happened to be a season 2 OG G.I. Joe show where Sergeant Slaughter and the crew get abducted by aliens and sent back in time to ancient Greece. And Sergeant Slaughter has to perform the trials of Heracles. And we watch this, and he's just like, I watched this a little bit. I was never a big G.I. Joe fan, but holy crap, yes, there's enough in this show we can have a field day with and do a good time with. So we said we need a third person. We need somebody who comes from a different perspective than us. And bless her, TV's Gina Ippolito, TV writer, comedy extraordinaire, had no knowledge of G.I. Joe at all. But ended up it was an animation writer. And so she came on as our third wheel and it completed the triad. And we've been going now for almost 9 years talking about, we've done all of original G.I. Joe, all of Deke era G.I. Joe from the early 90s. We've done all of G.I. Joe Extreme from the mid 90s. Currently, we're getting pretty close to the end of G.I. Joe Sigma 6 from the mid 2000s, which is the anime inspired G.I. Joe. And it is everything you think, warts and all, would you be if anime G.I. Joe existed. It is something else. And then we've got more G.I. Joe after that. They made 2 seasons of a show called Renegades, and then G.I. Joe Resolute. Yeah. And then there's a new G.I. Joe show coming out that they're working on right now, including the live action movies. Plus we mix it in with a bunch of other 80s and 90s cartoons. We try to find the worst of the worst, the weirdest of the weirdest. We're doing Rubik the Amazing Cube, Turbo Teen, Anything we can really find. We just did an episode of, or it's about to come out maybe, of the Charlie Chan and the Amazing Chan clan from, I believe, the 1970s, which is not very good.
I was gonna say I don't think that one's in my animation background repertoire. Actually, so yeah,
nor should it be.
That's a deep cut. That's a deep cut, right?
We go deep.
G.I. Joe's one of my personal favorites too. I also love the fun fact that that's one of the first shows that Bruce Timm, of course, of Batman the Animated Series worked on. He did backgrounds on that and whatnot, and it's just there's just so much great stuff that comes from G.I. Joe. I gotta ask, who is your favorite G.I. Joe?
Man, that's so tough. Growing up as a kid, I was a huge fan, believe it or not, of course, Cobra Commander, of course. But Barbecue had the greatest aesthetic. I loved the all red full body suit that he used to wear. He carried an axe around and had a flame. This guy's cool. Growing up more, I would say my favorite characters have become more Sergeant Slaughter, of course. Shipwreck is just a monument to joy. And just wonderful. These are all some of my favorites. I love them all, though. Don't make me pick. They're all my kids.
Yeah, Sergeant Slaughter has always been, I think, at the top of my list because also as a wrestling fan growing up and the crossover there, and then Gung Ho was always a favorite of mine. So yeah, definitely near the top there. Yeah, but it's hard to choose. It's hard to choose, especially because the roster's always growing and changing, and it's interesting because you mentioned all the different cartoons. It's who are they going to keep? Who are they going to add? Who are they going to reimagine? Because obviously there's sometimes they do a bigger roster, sometimes they do a smaller roster. I think Renegades only had it was like a half dozen of them, I think, at one point. Not a lot. Yeah.
The original show really focused on everybody until The Simpsons came around and hit its 30th season. G.I. Joe had the biggest roster of characters for any animated show or any show ever. Just so many. And they would always be, every episode would feature a different character, and it would be, when you'd see them all and they'd all interact in each other's adventures, and it was great. And then the future seasons started happening. They did pare the roster down to say 10 to 12 Joes that we're going to focus on. Maybe we'll have people come and go as we do it. And even in Sigma 6, where we're at right now, there's 7 or 8 Joe members. It is what it is. It's fine if you like those characters.
Sure. Well, and that's the risk you run, right? Is that for some of us, like you mentioned, if you have a smaller roster and it's oh, my guy was left off. It's hard to keep up. But you're in the game industry. I'm in the game industry. Ray, are we ever going to get a good G.I. Joe video game?
I would argue that we already have had a few. I would say that the one for the original Nintendo system, was it, I forget what something, Cobra's Return or something like that. The one, I really liked the one where it was a side-scrolling adventure, and you got to pick which Joe you wanted to take on which mission, and you could mix and match based on strengths and weaknesses. Some levels would be harder than others.
Mega Man.
Yeah, it was Mega Man style, and I thought that was pretty cool, especially back in the day. You didn't get that kind of variety. Generally speaking, of course, Mega Man is a thing. And I've actually played Operation Blackout, which is a more recent version of G.I. Joe. It is absolutely a beer and pretzels game. The gameplay is nothing, but it's nothing objectionable either. You have a set of Joes who have special powers. You're just defeating waves of enemies in a 3D action set situation. You got boss battles against the Cobra leaders. You got a fun story that actually kind of makes sense in the G.I. Joe universe. Look, whenever I've had a couple and I don't know what I'm going to do on a Saturday night and everybody else is in bed, I will play an hour of Operation Blackout, just do the next level, play it through, and I'll have a blast with it every single time.
That's fair. I'm trying to think. I thought I had just played a G.I. Joe game. It might have been, actually, I don't think I think we disagree. I don't think I enjoyed Operation Blackout.
Oh, no.
As much as you. Yeah, I don't think, I'm trying to remember, and I'm looking up my achievements to see if this was the one I had played.
Such a geek.
Yeah, well, that's how it works.
Is it possible you had trouble with the controller because there was too much grease on your hands from eating New York pizza?
That's an excellent callback, my friend. Well played.
Yeah. No, I think it wasn't that. I'm going to look it up because I'm curious because I did just play a G.I. Joe game. And
look, I'm going to play whatever you say it is. You tell me. I'm going to give you the real poop about it a week from now.
Yeah, I'm trying. Yeah, it was Operation Blackout. I gave it.
Well, you should have loved it.
I'm sorry. No, I gave it. I only gave it a
Ray
5 out of
meets
10.
his match. Ray.
I only gave it a 5 out of 10.
Let me tell you, I probably would also give it a 5 out of 10.
Yeah,
but
I
it's a
think you
great
did.
5 out of 10. It's a glass half full 5 out of 10, not a glass half empty 5 out of 10. There is a difference.
Yeah, Ray, I would say your review of it was like you said it, beer and pretzels. That's about 5 out of 10.
There you go. So I've played so many video games. I had to go back into my archives to like make sure that I had all my notes right. So that
Ray, this is not the Mass Effect trilogy we're talking about. This is a game that they just shot out. They said this is good enough, and I agree. It's good enough. You have to rate a game based on what it's trying to do. Not all games are the same. You know, what Friday the 13th for the Nintendo Entertainment System is trying to do and are failing with is not what the makers of Red Dead Redemption 2 are trying to do. And everything has to be graded, in my opinion, on a curve. How successful are they at doing the thing that they set out to do? And in the case of G.I. Joe Operation Blackout, I would probably honestly give it somewhere in the neighborhood of a 7.5-ish. But that's on a definite curve because what it's trying to do, I think it accomplishes perfectly well. Is there a ton of depth there? No. Is there a ton of just, fun factor? Absolutely. Great nostalgia. They did a great job, I think, with the voice cast. And they give you all the characters you want to see. What more do you want out of G.I. Joe Operation Blackout? In fact, 10 out of 10. Greatest game I've ever played.
No, I'm sorry. Like, look at this. I even forgot that I had played it until you had brought up. I had to look up my achievements, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I did play it." And I beat. Oh yeah, I do remember this. Remember this level? And I was like, to me, I just felt the controls were just very blah. I felt I think actually would have benefited more from actually being more linear. I think it was they tried to kind of like have too much of an open space for some areas. I remember, and I was just like, to your point, I think it would have been just better had they just kind of like stuck to what they were good at and kind of streamlined things. I think maybe they fell into the trap of trying to do like maybe trying to look around at other shooters and other things because it's a third-person shooter, right? Other games in the genre, and I think they kind of fell into that trap instead of just, to your point, just kind of trying to lean into that beer and pretzelness, and that's why I gave it a 5 out of 10.
I mean, it's okay to be wrong sometimes, Ray. That's fine.
Go get your burnt cheese pizza, and you can go play your G.I. Joe Operation Black. I'm going to move on and hope that someday, we're going to get ourselves a proper, grand scale, really epic G.I. Joe game. So,
we'll see if we get a tie-in.
G.I. Joes were great.
Well, we got the new comic book series that just came out. We have the new animated series that's still in the works right now. So maybe there will be a tie-in video game at some point, and maybe it will hit the notes that you like. I know that it will hit the notes I like because it will exist.
Fair enough. Lee, do you have any thoughts on G.I. Joe?
I'm enjoying watching you both go at each other.
I don't know if you can see it on my.
I
don't know if you can see it on my shelf over here. I've got G.I. Joe Mission Critical, the miniatures board game. Where you take members and many expansions because I am bad with money and tons of characters, tons of enemies. You're fighting on a board. You're going on missions as a Joe team, and you're just fighting little miniatures of Cobra figures and Joe figures, and it's amazing. Is it the deepest game ever? Absolutely not. Can you play it in like an hour to an hour and a half? Have a ton of Joe nostalgia, and if you only dust it off every once in a while, it's going to be the best thing you ever played. I just wanted to bring that up. Sorry, Lee, I'm stepping all over you.
I told you I'm enamored by watching the both of you interact right now. Like, buddy, Ray, I'm the sports guy on this show. I'm a big geek, but not like you two with this stuff. But I will tell you this, Ray, your passion for G.I. Joe and the way you just described that board game is infectious. I mean, you are absolutely the right person to be doing this.
I have a battle android trooper.
I was just about to say that's a battle android trooper. The bat's created specifically because back in the 80s you couldn't kill anyone, but you could destroy robots.
You could destroy they leaned on that way too heavily.
Can you kill people now, Ray?
I think they're a little more lenient with like knocking people off, sure, but like definitely in the 80s it was like you can, that's why you had red lasers and blue lasers. You couldn't show bullets or things like that. You had to be lasers, and that's the same thing. Ninja Turtles. That's why they made the foot soldiers robots. It was the exact same rule. It was actually 100%. Batman the animated series that started to break down those barriers a bit in the early 90s, but in the 80s. Yeah, no, that's why they were always robot enemies. So this way the heroes had something to blow up.
He's whatever Gotham needs him to be.
It's true. And you'd have to be a real crazy person to have 3 G.I. Joe related Funko Pops at your desk. Oh my God, there's a Zartan too.
Yeah, oh my God.
Oh my God. What is happening? What am I doing with life?
You're doing it right,
is that
You're doing it right.
Zartan dressed as Storm Shadow as he goes to kill the Soft Master? So,
Hard Master, sir.
Hard
Please
Master.
get your lore.
I
couldn't be more angry at you. The Detroit pizza was one thing, but
so
lore erroring.
Ray, I always get the masters mixed up. I'm so sorry.
There's nothing soft about the Arishikage
Doctor Who, huh? You guys, Doctor Who? No, just me? Okay, I'll be over here in the corner.
I thought it was weird that they were talking about a new doctor coming out, some guy, because I thought to myself, Doctor Who can't be male.
He's already out. It's already done.
It's outrageous. Why are they gender swapping Doctor Who to a guy? That's stupid.
Oh, buddy, if you didn't see the entire 60th anniversary special, it goes so much farther beyond that. I don't know if you had a chance to see it.
Doctor Who.
Your argument, sarcastic though it be, is actually that's not even in deep end right now. So Doctor Who fans, I love where they're going. But yes, it's been a crazy year there for Doctor Who.
I hear it's great. The people who love Doctor Who, bless them. Like, it's been going on. Like, I watched Doctor Who when I was a kid and thought it was the worst garbage I'd ever seen in my entire life. But this is also it may as well, if it wasn't, in black and white with, on a BBC stage for $1.50. And I watched some clips of some more recent episodes.
It was £1.50.
Pound 50 farthings. And I watched some more recent, from the mid 2000s Doctor Who. And I couldn't tell the difference, but I'm glad that you guys are liking it. And that's all that really matters. Like what you like. I don't have to like everything. Ray over here thinks Operation Blackout isn't very good. Not everybody, has to like everything.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a Whovian by any count. I have the things that I love, but I've enjoyed the recent changeover and what they've done over the last few years. But no, Doctor Who's probably not my property. I'm
the people who are excited about it. People who are excited about it are very, very excited about it. And then the people who are, generally speaking, trash human beings are very upset about it. That's how I know they're going in the right direction.
Yeah. That's right.
I agree with you.
That is a very fair and valid
point.
You
guys are similar. This is terrifying.
Yes. Before we wrap things up here, Ray, me and Lee, I just hosted one show. Lee has several shows. Ray, you also have several shows.
We need to make a new show called Death Rays, and it's just you two. I would watch that. I mean, listen to it. Like tonight on Death Rays, we're angry about it. It's another episode. Come on and listen.
I love the idea of starting another podcast. The problem is I love the idea of staying married even more.
We get it.
Only so many hours in the day, my friend. Yeah, but you do have another podcast. It's the Who Would Win show. Obviously, the Who Would Win podcast. You guys do these fictional matchups every week. We mentioned the show. This week you do Captain America, Dr. Robotnik. You've done things like more recently Clayface versus Sandman. I personally think Sandman would win. It's just a great epic idea. Again, what was the impetus for this? And God, I wish we had thought of it first.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you, James Gavs, who's my co-host of the show, it's his property, and he was actually doing the show for a while, like a year and a half maybe, before I came on board. He had a different co-host, he had an all-time judge, and he sort of had his own operation, but everybody lived in all different areas around the country, and he really wanted it to be LA-based and local back in 2019. And so a mutual writer friend of ours reached out to me and said, hey, I know this guy. He's doing this podcast. He's been doing a little bit if you want to check it out. Is this the kind of thing, arguing about superheroes and characters? Is this a thing that you could get involved in? And I looked at it. I was like, yeah, this is exactly the kind of thing that I would do. Go on a show and argue who would win in a fight between Captain America and Dr. Robotnik from Sonic the Hedgehog. Yes. And so I met James. I met one of the producers. We did at a burger joint called The Stand in Woodland Hills as I was working at Infinity Ward at the time on Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019. What a game. And we met at lunchtime and had some burgers. And then they sort of just the producer gave us on the spot, what if you guys just did a sample show just to see how your stuff is. George Washington versus Abraham Lincoln, just sight unseen, go. And we just started riffing and going on it. And like the points that were coming out were great. We ended up doing that as an actual episode of the show years down the road. And one that I think was very, very fun. And like the energy was so big of the show that everybody else in the area were sort of like staring at us and like watching us do this live version of the show. And the producer looked around and goes, look, I can see you just grabbing people's attention. I think this is a thing we could do. So yeah, we've been doing the show now. We're on season 6 of the Who Would Win show. You can find it wherever the heck you podcast, except Google Podcasts. That is no longer a thing. Goodbye, Google Podcasts. Nobody was listening anyway. That's why it's no longer a thing. I'm not losing any sleep about it. But your Spotify's, your Podbeans, your Apple Podcast, wherever the heck you want to do it, you can find the show and listen, and it's an evergreen show. You can pick and choose episodes based on sort of what strikes your fancy, but of course, always listen to the new episode when it comes out immediately, because I like money.
So wait, who won, George Washington or Abe Lincoln? Because
I guess you got to listen to the show to find out.
I would say George Washington.
I would say George Washington in a heartbeat. I mean,
Yes.
These
like Ray said, we're going to have to go listen to find out.
No, I'm debating it right now, Ray. Ray, I'm talking to both of you.
It's not a debate. I mean, he'd have to take the opposite opinion.
I
agree. Agree that George
I
Washington.
agree that you have to go listen to it. I wouldn't do that to you, my friend.
Abraham Lincoln fought vampires. What is wrong with you two?
No, that's a fictional version of Abraham Lincoln, though. That's not actual.
Is it?
You don't know that
there?
George Washington. Listen, vampires, British. I mean, come on.
I will say is that particular episode. Usually we try to keep it to the realm of the version of the character that we're talking about. So if we have, say, for example, Captain America, we've done Captain America from the comic books, Steve Rogers. We've done MCU movie version of Captain America in a battle against Ben Affleck's Batman. That's a fun one. We've also done the newer version of Captain America as played by Falcon. Gosh, why am I blanking on that character's name? I didn't rep him in that episode, so I don't remember. But the new Captain America from comic books. So we've done all that with the George Washington versus Abraham Lincoln. And what makes that episode so special to me is for the first 2 points, we keep it down to like, oh, these are the battles that he fought on the battlefield. These are the ways that Abraham Lincoln actually turned out he was a professional wrestler. If you didn't know that, Honest Abe was his ring name. And so we get into all of these details. And then in point number 3, both of us just decide to go to absolute crazy town. And I was repping George Washington in that battle. So I brought up his great appearance, and who could forget it, Assassin's Creed 3, when he had magical spheres. And became a tyrant and had magic powers. And then James brought up Abraham Lincoln and his ability with fighting vampires. And the whole episode goes, usually we keep it contained. This one we just let explode.
Well, that's a promo for that episode, 1,000,000%. And look, I'm going to say this too. In a time period where professional athletes will stare directly into the sun for 30 minutes at a time, you bet your butt I want to know who's going to beat Robotnik or Captain America on a podcast. That is you're doing it correct, my friend. We understand.
Thank you.
We understand each other.
It's a really fun show. And, I used to be a professional wrestler back in the day. I don't so much do that now because I'm old and broken. But back in the day, I was strong and fit and was able to do it. So I told James when we do the show, I say, look, I like the idea for your show. I would love to be your new co-host on the show and replace the person who you've done what I would call the preseason with. But one thing you have to understand is if we're going to do this show, if I'm going to do this show, we have to reimagine what it would be like and bring some of that professional wrestling ethos and showmanship to the show. It can't just be two guys just talking about characters, because after a certain period of time, it would become too dry. If you've ever seen some of these comics history channels, you can watch one of those videos and then it's like chewing on sandpaper. If you want to keep going, you're going to be asleep. I said, we have to bring some theatricality to it. We need to absolutely bring the best versions of ourselves every single week to the show. And that's what's going to really drive. And we've had over 3 million downloads of the Who Would Win show.
That's awesome.
And I'd like to believe we're doing something right.
You are. You absolutely are, my friend.
Absolutely.
And I'm with Ray and saying you should all check this show out because
100%.
If you like our mashups, you will love this show.
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, well, you brought it. You bring it every week on your show, my friend, and Ray, you brought it here today, and we really, really appreciate it. But we don't want to take up too much more of your time. You've been very generous.
I
giving
have
us an
literally
hour.
nothing to do. I could go for another hour and a half.
Back to the Detroit Lions, then.
Let's talk about Ben Johnson. Can you believe these? No, I'm just saying, look at Jared Goff as a potential top 5 MVP candidate next year. I believe they are going to. We lost Josh Reynolds to the Broncos, which is okay. I miss Josh Reynolds. He had great chemistry, but those 2 drops in the second half of the NFC Championship game really hurt my soul. He's because he was so clutch all year round. Won us games, flat out won us important games, and in the most important game, he just could not answer the bell, and that's going to get you out of town for a team on the up and up. I look forward to. And mark my words right now, I think they're going to go wide receiver in the first round. And I think they're going to take that guy, and I don't have his name in front of me, but he's out of Texas, as our new wide receiver 2 to play opposite J-Mo with Amon-Ra in the slot. And they are going to do damage next year.
No, absolutely. They're going to be scary. I'm curious to see. I'm glad you brought up the draft. I'm curious to see what my Giants do. I'm curious to see what Lee's Eagles end up doing. But I'm definitely curious to see where the Lions are probably going to go receiver. It's a deep receiver draft this year, I think. At least the
Can
first
I ask
round.
you? Oh, yeah, absolutely. You're right. And that's why I look forward to a good person being there at 29. Can you believe we're drafting at 29? Lee, I got to ask you, because I'm fascinated and in awe of last year's Eagles team. I thought
you and all of us, my friend,
through week 11, that was the best team in the NFL. How are we possibly or anyone going to stand up against them? And then they lost to every single team, including, if I remember this, the Arizona Cardinals, who are not good on any level. What happens to the Philadelphia Eagles? 60 seconds and begin.
Yeah, we talked about it in depth on the show, and as a sports person, I always admit that we see very little of what's going on in that locker room. And I told Ray that the simplest explanation tends to be the correct explanation. And the simplest explanation that I could see is that the play calling was terrible, like beyond terrible, and that the players were not buying into that package or that system from a coordinator front. I think that was confirmed when we kept our head coach and got 2 brand new coordinators. And have decided to kind of shift the team a bit. It doesn't sound like to me that there's a rift in the locker room. It doesn't sound like these guys don't get along. It just sounds like poor football decision-making was happening. And they've got one season to prove that to be true, right? Because if it doesn't happen, they're going to collapse hardcore. But yeah, look, man, it was a horrible collapse. And Ray will tell you too, wasn't panicking for most of it till the very end. But you could see that when you lose a locker room, and this can happen from each side of the ball, it is very possible for both sides of the ball to lose the locker room and not the head coach. And I think that that's what happened here. And again, when you see the head coach come back and not the coordinators, I think that's very telling. But that's my belief. I mean, I know people want there to be more. There's a huge fight going on internally. I don't think that's what was happening.
I'm excited for you guys to get Gardner Johnson back. He's one of my absolute favorite players in the league from when he was at the Saints. So I was super excited to get his attitude, his leadership. The greatest moment in the playoffs happened when he picked off Baker Mayfield in the Tampa Bay game, ran all the way around the field, and then as he was on the Tampa Bay sideline and coming back on board, he passed by Baker Mayfield and he handed him the ball. What an a-hole! I love him. I love him. That was a
I put you on the gridiron, buddy. But it's a very hard collapse to explain. But I think the fact that they didn't fire everyone also tells you something. Now, listen, if they don't win this year, Nick Sirianni's gone, and that team's getting rebuilt. All right. But it's tough. It's a tough one to look at. I mean, I think there were also, as always, there's injuries you can't see. But that was a tough one.
Is it possible? And I'm just spitballing. I'm not trying to be cruel, but is it possible that there's just no leadership from the players? Like Jalen Hurts obviously is a tremendous talent. He can do so many good things. But is he having the same problem so many other quarterbacks have had? He can't get over the hump because he's just not that type of leader.
Well, a few things. One, yes, it's very possible, but let's also take a step back. He took this team to a Super Bowl once already. He didn't have the worst season of all time last year. I'm not ready to throw it into that loop yet. If this was 5 years in a row of really mediocre football, I would say that. But no, look, man, it's really, really hard to win. It's really hard to win. The key, I think, is, are you competitive year to year? Something happened in that locker room. Again, Ray watched me go through it. I said, I just don't understand the play calling. All right. If there's not good leadership behind the ball, and I don't mean a quarterback, I mean the play calling, it doesn't matter if you're a leader or not. Now, adversely, he might be a great leader, but if they don't buy into the system, he can't lead. Right?
Sure.
If there's a disconnect between him and his coordinator, he can't lead. Keep in mind, we shifted our defensive coordinator, I think, with 4 or 5 games left. Or no, with 6 games left. We didn't win a game after that, I don't believe. Right? So I think there was poor internal decision-making. And I'll reiterate, we see so little of what's actually going on in the ethos of a team. But again, it was a very curious situation. Like the Philadelphia Flyers are going through the exact same thing right now. They just dropped 8 games in a row after having a really consistent season. And they look cooked. I mean, they look completely exhausted. So I think also too, you look at the offseason departures, Jason Kelce, retiring. I mean, that tells you something, right? He's exhausted. And he said, I physically can't do it. We forget he's been babysitting quarterbacks for almost a decade, brand new quarterbacks. So there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle. I'll reiterate again, it's very, very, very hard to win the Super Bowl. So it's just a question of how competitive can you be. And we all grew up in a time, or I should say we've aged in a time where you've seen a dynasty and you've seen a second dynasty. That's not normal. And that's not normal in the history of sports, right?
Particularly football.
Yeah, it's just,
Modern
it's
football.
not a normal thing. It's just, but the problem is when you see it all the time, you're like, well, they're doing it all the time. I'm like, actually, it proves my point even more because only 2 teams have been able to do it out of 32 in 20 years, 30 years, right? So the odds are never in your favor. We'll see what happens. But yeah, it was tough to watch. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, it was
tough to watch from an outsider, and I was actively kind of rooting against you, and it was still tough to watch. Something happened there. Yeah, it went from being, I really don't look forward to being the 3 seed and having to go to Philadelphia. I don't know how we go through Philadelphia and San Francisco in the same stretch. I think Philadelphia is so physical. By the time we would get to San Francisco, we'd be hurt real bad. To it being, is Philadelphia like even going to be? And they weren't. Is Philadelphia even going to be there? And the answer was no. They're not even going to be a factor in this playoffs. And I was blown away by that.
I'll say this again too. Perhaps the most curious thing to me, when I say curious, I mean interesting, right? Is that Nick Sirianni kept his job and the coordinators didn't.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's very interesting to think about. All right, what that tells you is that maybe he played his cards right. Who knows? Maybe Jeffrey Lurie, maybe the GM was like, you got to put this guy at coordinator, and it wasn't his decision. There's so much politics that happen within professional football that people don't see. And sports in general. Again, it's very easy to watch the games and come to a conclusion. Truth is, we all know nothing. Unless you're in that locker room, you really don't know what's going on. So again, this is a win or bust year for Nick Sirianni, probably for Jalen Hurts too, in that mindset. But we'll see what happens. When it comes to the Eagles, buddy, since 2017, I've had a hard time holding any animosity towards them because they've brought us a lot of joy over the last few years. Even in that Super Bowl loss, it was a fun team to watch. So that will go south pretty quick next season if they're not competitive, though.
Yeah, but as a Detroit fan, if my team wins once, I'm happy for life. Basically, when the Tigers, and look, I'm old enough to remember when the Tigers won in 1984, and that was a magical team full of just superstars that just believed in each other and made it happen. That's good. The Tigers losing in 2005. With an amazing team. I thought they should have won. They just got absolutely pooped on by the St. Louis Cardinals, and that one stung a lot, but I didn't care because at the end of the day, I've seen it won. Michigan winning the national championship this year. They don't need to win for 30 years, and I'm still going to remember how amazing this year. I was at the Rose Bowl when they played Alabama, and it was, the emotions. Look, a grown man cried in the stands. I'm not going to say it was me, but it was emotional of a game. And so if my Lions could just pull through, get one for me, I'm set for life. I've been waiting too long for something.
And we have found now the fundamental difference between you and New York Ray, which is New York Ray wants his team to win the following year in the middle of the year they've already won.
Sure. Yeah. I guess.
Every year.
If it's not 3 in a row, why bother?
Winner bust.
Winner bust. Yeah.
Dynasties. I want dynasties.
Have you ever had a dynasty outside the Yankees? I don't think you've ever had a dynasty outside the Yankees, right?
No. The Giant. If Plaxico Burress didn't shoot himself in the leg, the Giants might have won back-to-back.
That's the most New York thing ever.
Yeah, I know.
Plaxico Burress is a wonderful story. Michigan State Spartan, Plaxico Burress. The fact that he shot himself because he went to the strip club wearing jogging pants. That's all you need to know about that guy.
Yeah.
And he had a gun in the waistband that fell down his pants and shot him from the hip. Again, any man who goes to the strip club, whatever. Some guys are into it, some guys are not. But if you're wearing sweatpants to the strip club, you're that guy. You are that. You shouldn't be that guy, but you are that guy.
Yep.
I am invincible.
There was a very good chance that that was after the miracle in Super Bowl 42 defeating the undefeated Patriots. I really believe that if Plaxico doesn't shoot himself, I really believe the Giants go back-to-back. And then if they win in 46, then you have 3 in 5 years, so you kind of have what's going on with the Chiefs right here. But then after Plaxico shot himself, they had to rebuild the whole offense because he was the wide receiver 1. He was the main guy. And so, just the Yankee dynasty where we won 4 out of 5 in the late 90s. So, so very spoiled, obviously. Full of, led by Derek Jeter, super, future Hall of Famer. And, half that team had their numbers retired and whatnot. And Mariano Rivera, of course, in the back end, the greatest closer of all time. So,
Ray, are you okay? You take a breath there. There you go. All right, he's back.
No, Plaxico Burress is, an underrated talent, especially as a marksman.
Well, I think on that note, again, the shows knowing is half the podcast, and who would win. You can get them wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all those fun places. No longer Google Podcasts.
Could I add one? Yeah, don't do Google Podcasts. Yeah, because I have a third show that's got a new episode coming out relatively soon. Because I do things and I can't stop making things. I made a Vampire the Masquerade audio drama loosely based on a game I ran like 25 years ago, a million years ago, 172,000 years ago. I did this vampire game. And so it's on episode 7 is the one that's going to be coming out fairly soon in the hopefully next few weeks. And if you are a fan of audio dramas, if you're a fan of scripted material and some of the greatest voice, I can't believe everybody said yes to this, but I have some of the greatest vocal cast that I could have ever dreamed of having. Just flat out working actors all across the board doing phenomenal work for me. And I'm just blessed to have it. But I've been writing and editing and producing the show. It's got all original music from a top-tier composer, and I'm very, very proud of that. Like, that's like the big thing that I'd like to show more than anything else. Listen to my other shows if you want to see me yell about stuff. If you want to see something that's kind of my pet project and the thing I care about the most and put out the least, you can go to vampiredetroit.com, or you can go find Reclaimed Detroit, a Vampire the Masquerade audio drama, wherever you podcast as well. That's the one that I would love it. Give me some listens there. Some 5-star reviews would be very helpful for the algo, as we kids say it in the streets. And vampiredetroit.com. That's the one. If you like vampire stuff, if you like sort of darker, mystery-based, character-driven stuff, give it a go. I would love to see you there.
That's awesome. Yeah, so absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Listen to what Ray just said. Go listen to all his shows, including was it vampiredetroit.com. That's right. And yeah, that's phenomenal. That's great. Actually, I've done some acting in some narrative podcasts myself, actually. So
yeah, I play, wouldn't believe this. I do, me too. I do some VO work. Heck, let's just keep plugging stuff. There's a channel called The Mortalverse that does Justice League and DC Comics audio dramas, not affiliated. It's fan produced, but I play a character. It's an obscure DC character named Batman on that show.
He's whatever Gotham needs him to be.
That's, and it's weird that maybe this is why I love that statue in Burbank so much, because I just see myself. It's like a statue of me, basically. But I play Batman in all of their properties and just got asked to do more. There was a screenplay for something called Justice League Mortal that was supposed to come out in the mid-aughts, actually right before the MCU was going to drop. They had it ready to go. It was funded. It was cast. They were going to make this Justice League movie to kick off this DC universe. And then they just decided in the 11th hour not to make it. But that script has existed online since that time. So the fine folks, Matthew Dawson and the crew over there at the Dial Up Movie Club, decided we have the script. Let's turn it into like a 5-part audio drama. We don't need to change anything. Like, we have this. Let's just cast a bunch of people in it and let's just make it. So they made it just from the script. Justice League Mortal is what it's called. And I do play Bruce Wayne / Batman on that show. Listen to that too. Why not? Let's give them a plug.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now you got to do your Batman voice.
No, I do not.
All right, we'll have to listen.
You gotta go hear it at the Justice League Mortal / Mortalverse. Find it wherever you find things.
No free samples here. No free samples here, folks.
No, the first time free, that works for drugs. It doesn't work for podcasts. I want you to go seek it out and listen to it. Give them the clicks, give them the 5-star reviews, and say, Batman was great. That's all you need to say.
There you go. There you go. You got your marching orders, everybody. We really appreciate it. Ray Stakenas, everybody. Ray, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, you are welcome back anytime, my friend. But for Ray, for Lee, I am Ray Carcillo. We appreciate everybody for tuning in. As always, this has been a special edition of the Geeks Who Like Sports Leaderboard podcast interviews. We'll see you next time, everybody.